Welcome, brother. In light of your recent achievements in the field and success in the trials, I have been sent to give you a verbal induction into the inner circle. I understand that this may all be obvious to you, but please, exercise patience. It is necessary that you hear all of this. We have served the Imperium since its inception. Born in the waning years of the Unification Wars, the First Legion were the first Astartes to see combat in the field, and would be the Emperor's most trusted legion, given the most grotesque weapons of war to safeguard and use as they saw fit. In the 41st millennium, we continue to serve, though are much changed. Driven by our shame, we hunt our wayward brothers with a zeal not seen in many chapters, the need to expunge our shame driving us to many extremes. Sometimes it is even necessary for us to kill loyalist soldiers to keep our secrets from being revealed. Today, I've been sent to tell you how the Dark Angels became what we are. The Dark Angels were the First Legion, the first true Astartes force created by the Emperor. We were created long before any of our cousins took their first steps out into the galaxy, our gene seed having been the earliest to have been perfected. We were not drawn from any particular region or clan, however, unlike other legions, such as the now hated Third that entirely hailed from the nobility of Europa. The First Legion was drawn from the entirety of the home world. Within the growing ranks of the First, every culture would mix and clash, producing a unique, homogeneous culture. Its first members took their names from the folklore and legends of prehistory, names like Heracles, Astalan, Urien. Quite fitting for what would follow, as it turns out. The first actual battle that the Dark Angels took part in was the bitter put-down of an attempted coup. Does it shock you to learn that even before the heresy, there was betrayal and doubt? The coup was perpetrated by a Grand Provost and what remained of the Thunder Warriors. They intended to punish the Custodes for the massacre of their kin atop Mount Ararat, a foolish gesture. The Custodes and the First slaughtered them. They are the future, Valdor replied grimly, taking out a lurching Thunder Warrior with a 1-2 slice from the Apollonian spear, leaving a wreckage of organs and metal plate in a smoking heap at his feet. The Angels of Death. He was getting closer to the Primarch. Air bursts of munitions blew across them both, filming armor with embers, and the two armies grappled around them in every direction. The tanks that Ushatan had so painstakingly dragged up here were struggling, caught by the punishing altitude and the ability of these new troops to take them on unaided. Even as Valdor swung round to face the next foe, he glimpsed one of the Angels rip the turret from a Serpent troop carrier and fling frag grenades through the gaping hole. By the time combat was joined again, that machine was just another blackening ruin, and its slayer was already racing towards his next target.
Well,
Ushotan said, panting hard as he swung his thick blade around.
I don't like them.
Valdor found himself admiring that dry-as-bones humour. He had always admired that about the Thunder Warriors. The humanity hadn't been bled from them to turn them into what they were. They had never had their emotions etiolated, nor their dreams plucked from their minds and left to wither. He would have liked to agree with the sentiment, to reply with something that might make them both laugh wryly, as warriors were supposed to do. But, as was usual, he couldn't think of anything suitable. All he had were the facts of the case, the artifacts of duty.
I don't like them much either,
Valdor admitted, punching his gauntlet through the helm face of an Imperial Guardsman before rounding on the already stricken Thunder Warrior.
But they are here, nonetheless. You should, I think, have seen them coming. Though Valdor and many Custodes didn't agree with the creation of the Astartes, created they were. More reliable than the Thunder Warriors, more controllable, they would be the tip of the Terran spear, thrown from the Emperor's hand across the galaxy to reunite humanity and its disparate pieces. From their earliest days, they earned an unofficial title,
They were the Emperor's Uncrowned Princes, the Emperor's First Legion. The First Legion's formation before the discovery of our Primarch was that of the hosts, then refined into the hexagrammaton by the Lion himself. These hosts ran beneath the structure of the Legion, beneath company and squad lines. A single squad may have members from 2, 3, or even 4 hosts within it, each member a specialist in a certain way of war, allowing for easy access to specialized skills without the need for deployments of entire companies. This was the backbone of the First's fighting prowess. No single man was a master of all skills, but as a whole, the Legion was a jack of all trades to rival the Ultramarines. When one of the hosts was needed, the ranking commander would activate the highest ranking member of that host, who would then take command of the legionaries of that host. One by one, they would depart from their squads to form up under his command, operating alongside the other squads or companies until the battle's end, at which point they would then rejoin their squads, their duty done. Their sieges could rival the dogged determination of the Iron Warriors, their strikes as swift as the Raven Guard. They would face their first challenge shortly after the beginnings of the Great Crusade. As their renown grew, the Uncrowned Princes would fall under the influence of a fatal flaw, where the sons of Sanguinius experienced the Red Thirst. The Dark Angels would become puppets to the whims of their pride, stuck in their ways even as the Legion Master stood as the third of the Imperial Court just behind Malcador and Horus. They would cease learning, stop adapting, and become stuck in their ways. Old battle tactics turning to solid walls, preventing change as their confidence outstripped their skill. This unwillingness to grow would cost the Legion dearly, even as the other legions began to outstrip them in honor indeed. The First Legion would lose its Grand Master at Canis Pelor. The following turmoil among the company masters would be cause for great concern, even as the circumstance demanded unity. They quarreled among themselves, guarding their knowledge and secrets, refusing to cooperate with one another, stripping the Legion of its main asset through their jealousy, and beating themselves bloody against the foe to prove their supremacy over the other legions. Malcador himself would step in and name a new Grand Master, Urian Vendraig. But this wouldn't last long. Urian was lost to the first Rangdan Xenocides, and their approach to the Primarch Guilliman would see the Legion split apart into individual warrior masters. Spread across the stars, they would become a shadow of their former selves, seeking battle and death for its own sake as they desperately sought to prove their supremacy, only serving to solidify their decline. The discovery of our Primarch would change everything. Found on Old Caliban, a world of vast forests, monstrous, chaos-infused beasts, and the knightly orders that protected the citizens from them, 500 warriors would make planetfall and greet their father. These 500 would become the companions, bound to gather information on the Primarch and keep it for the benefit of the Legion, learning from him as they fought alongside him. The Lion would unite the First under a new banner. No longer the Uncrowned Princes, he would rename them as his Dark Angels and reform the Legion under the structure of the hexagrammaton, similar to the hosts of old, but now formed as the 6 wings: the Death Wing, Raven Wing, Dread Wing, Fire Wing, Iron Wing, and Storm Wing. He would duel each champion of the Legion personally, besting them in single combat that could last for hours before he pledged himself to his sons, and they to him. With a host of 20,000 battle brothers, he would reunite his sons, gathering the scattered companies to himself in an effort to reverse the stagnation that had taken hold of them as they fought alone in the dark of the void. The Lion would lead the Dark Angels through victory after victory, never demanding honor be given when it was not, never demanding plaudits or awards where they were not freely offered. Under his guidance, the Legion would see the battles of the Rangdan Xenocides through, even though it halved their number, and many more afterwards. They would fight on, entrusted by the Emperor to push through the harshest of foes and deadliest of battlefields without complaint. They were the Emperor's First Legion, and though they may not win the honors and awards of others, they needed them not. Entrusted with his most deadly, world-ending weaponry and secrets beyond compare, the First would act as the Emperor's unseen blade, the protectors and ultimate punishers of his Imperium. You were not the first of my sons to reclaim a place at my side, but your tally of victories is second to no other. Even Horus looks upon them with envy.
Horus inspires, said the Lion. Magnus enlightens. Lorgar illuminates. Reboot has raised an Imperium in miniature that celebrates his name and yours. I have left as many worlds behind me as any two of my brothers, but I fear that darkness and ash will be the legacy I leave to your Imperium.
The Emperor considered long, as he often did, before giving an answer. In the time of the Egypta, there was an empress named Hatshepsut. By all accounts of her name that survived, she was an equitable and proficient ruler. By the standards of her time, she rebuilt her land in the wake of war and occupation, erecting great monuments and bringing prosperity to her people. She reassembled the Egypta's navy, using it to re-establish their old empire, and launched military campaigns against the nations who had once been their oppressors.
A legacy whose parallels are not hard to see, said the Lion.
And yet those who came after her did all within their power to ensure that she would have no legacy. Her name was chiseled from every monument, her every deed and triumph stricken from public record. Even her body was removed from its royal tomb.
Why, if her reign was so equitable?
Because those who succeeded her desired it. Because sometimes what comes before is too troublesome to be paved over in rockcrete, to amend with a monument to compliance or a golden aquila on an imperial flag. Sometimes it is enough only that it be destroyed, that no trace of it but darkness and ash be left to endure.
And yet history still remembers this empress.
The Emperor Thutmose III did not have his dark angels. He had always been guarded with his humours. Those few who knew him took it as a surfeit of phlegm, mistakenly believing his character to take after that of his brother, Dawn, but that was to mistake circumspection for obduracy, aloofness for indifference, and Lionel Johnson displayed neither. He demanded much and gave but little, yet in his heart he loved all of his sons as both a lord and a father. His pride in their deeds was surpassed only by the demand he placed on those deeds being exceeded. He had overseen the extermination of countless billions. Such was his duty, his special place within the pantheon of warlike avatars who served their father's ambitions. And though he took no joy from it, nor did he question its justice, his brothers thought him unquestioningly ruthless, and they were right. They believed that he would expend any resource, even the lives of his own sons, to persecute the Imperium's wars, and they were right. They said that he had not shed a single tear at such losses, not even after the annihilation of the Rangda had seen his legion's strength struck in half. And again, they were right. They thought these things a criticism of him. The Wolf King boasted to all that he was his father's executioner. He was a deterrent, a hound to snarl from behind a sealed gate, never to be unleashed. What the Lion was to his father did not speak its name so brazenly, for where Russ was a warning, the Lion was a solution. The final solution. He was the Emperor's exterminator. What the honor of Russ would not abide, he would sanction without hesitation. The enemy who might yet be integrated, the adversary whose misguided but noble resistance might be canonized in posterity. These were wars for his brothers to wage. When the First Legion turned their guns upon a foe, it was to annihilate without trace, to obliterate beyond all hope of record. That was the purpose for which the Dark Angels were created, and it was the reason that he made them first. Even the Mechanicum did not know what terrible secrets had been locked away by the Dreadwing in chambers such as these. "It is a pity that your campaigns kept you from the triumph," said the Emperor. "Your presence was missed by your brothers. Horus in particular spoke to me of his regret."
"He knows that I would have attended had I been able,"
the Lion replied, a tone far sharper than any he had ever before employed in the presence of his father. "You are troubled," said the Emperor.
"The Imperium celebrates, but its triumph is empty. The galaxy is not won because Horus has his great victory."
"Recall my words to you. Olenor is just another victory."
"Then why the pageantry?"
"Some men demand such pomp. They cannot accept the end of one era and the commencement of another without an occasion by which to mark it and give it meaning. Laurels must be given, honors and fair titles invented, so that they may be bestowed upon favored generals. Some men need recognition." The shadows around the Emperor's throne deepened, but beneath the layers of obfuscation, deep within the myriad guises of that singularly unfathomable being, the Lion felt the Emperor behold his firstborn son. "Some men," the Emperor continued, "do not.
But where greatness walks, jealousy soon follows in its shadow. Luther, The man who had found the lion on Caliban as a child and raised him had been inducted into the Legion just as many Knights of Caliban's orders had. But where many contented themselves with their duty, Luther simmered in jealousy and anger. It was he that should lead the Legion, he thought. He that deserved to be the greatest man of a generation. Had he never found the lion, he would have been the greatest Knight of Caliban. Instead, he played second fiddle to a feral child he found in the woods. This jealousy came to a head when Luther almost allowed a Saroshi ambassador to sneak a nuclear warhead aboard the First Legion flagship, Invincible Reason. Though he eventually changed his mind and would foil the attempt, the Lion discovered this treachery. As punishment, the Lion would send many veterans back to Caliban for seemingly obscure reasons. It did not matter if they were Terran or Caliban born. Luther and many others were sent back to their home world to live out their lives as a garrison. Stripped of their ships after Luther disobeyed his orders, feelings of abandonment and resentment would grow among the soldiers left to train and guide the new generation of Calibanite recruits. Eventually, they would turn from their Primarch fully, Luther himself having been seduced by chaos, even if many of the Lion legionaries knew nothing of their treachery. This betrayal would not make its way into the Legion proper, however. Even as many legions were undermined by the warrior lodges placed there by the word-bearers, the hexagrammaton structure of the Dark Angels made their inner workings impervious to outside scrutiny and meddling. They already had sanctioned groups that went beyond company and squad lines, and needed no lodges. When the heresy broke out, no traitors were found within the ranks of the Dark Angels that were with the Lion, and together they would wage war on the legions that had turned from the Emperor's light. At its outset, they were far from terror, waging war on a small civilization. This was essential to the plans of the traitors, as they knew that if the First Legion was able to link up with other loyalist forces, their advance to terror would be blunted before they could make any headway. They would be delayed further by the wicked Night Lords, their legion having been sent to the Eastern Fringe to delay them during the Thramas Crusade. This brutal war would test both legions. The Dark Angels' remorseless prowess against the Night Lord's cunning sadism. Ultimately, though, the first would prevail, ambushing the Night Lord's fleet, breaking the Legion, and scattering their ships even as they captured both Primarch Kurz and First Captain Sevatar aboard the Invincible Reason. From here, they would follow the light of the Pharos to Ultramar, joining with Guilliman and Sanguinius to form Imperium Secundus, before eventually making way for Terra proper as the traitor forces besieged the homeworld. Only Sanguinius would make it in time, Guilliman and the Lion staying behind to cover the Blood Angels' fleet. The first would make for the traitor homeworlds, destroying many in their crusade to enact vengeance on their former brothers. Barbarous, Chemos, Nuceria, all burned under the Lion's fury in an effort to draw traitor forces away, even as First Captain Corswain was able to reach Terra to reactivate the Astronomicon. The reinforcements he had received from the treacherous commanders on Caliban being instrumental in their victory. Though they would make their way for Terra with the Ultramarines and Space Wolves, they were too late. The Emperor was wounded unto death, Horus dead, and the traitors in full retreat. And all the while, betrayal would fester on the first homeworld, Caliban. The Dark Angels' return home was heralded by the flashes of orbital defense platforms and macro cannons. Surprised that they were being fired on by their own, the Dark Angels under the Line would make planetfall under fire and confront their traitorous brethren. Luther was fully under the sway of chaos by this point, and was given the power to mortally wound the Lion in single combat. Legend says that in the final moment though, Luther gained clarity, and the scale of his betrayal drove him mad, weeping over his supposed slaying of his former friend, the child that he had raised, dead before him. As the planet broke apart under the bombardment of the Lion's fleet, a warp rift would open up, dragging the fallen angels away and scattering them across the galaxy. And history. Though Luther was captured and held for some time, his escape is a mark of supreme shame for our chapter. Post-heresy, the Legion would become the Dark Angels chapter that you see today, the largest surviving piece of Caliban, formerly the Tower of Angels, home to the Order of Knights the Lion was raised by, was turned into the Rock, the mighty fortress monastery which accompanies our roaming fleet across the galaxy. Our armor, formerly the black, silver and red of the First Legion, was changed to a uniform green in memory of our Primarch and homeworld. Only the Ravenwing and Deathwing sporting the black and bone, derived from both our former heraldry and the bone armor plates of the Deathwing companions. At the Council of Fareth, our first chapter master, Fareth Redloss, would state that we could never be forgiven, until the fallen angels had been hunted down and forced to repent. We've never ceased this quest. Though the returned Primarch has changed how they dealt with somewhat, the hunt continues, our shame ever present. We remain unforgiven, even though the Lion has returned to us, appearing at our time of greatest need. As the demon Primarch whirled towards his new attackers, a golden armored figure rocketed from atop a broken stairway and swung his glowing axe at Angron. Fast as fury, the demon Primarch spun, ignoring the Dark Angel's firestorm as he parried Commander Dante's attack. A shockwave exploded out as Spinegrinder met the axe mortalis. Angron staggered back from the exchange. Dante, by comparison, was smashed from the air and into the stone steps hard enough to crack them. He lay still and didn't rise. Azrael cried out in dismay as Angron threw back his head and roared in triumph. The Blood Angel's chapter master lay defenseless before him, open to the killing blow. Yet as Azrael watched powerless, shadows suddenly coiled about the Red Angel and his victim. Tendrils of mist obscured the figures, and from amidst the vapors spread incongruous green shoots of what looked to Azrael like plant life. Shifting shapes unfurled, resembling nothing so much as a sketch of a dream of half-remembered trees. Their dense boughs more shadow than substance. In the next instant, Azrael's bewilderment gave way to awe. A tall figure in a flowing cloak stepped from the mists to place himself between Angron and Dante. Space Marines in black armor manifested around him and spread out down the steps, but Azrael barely noticed them. He could only stare at the warrior with the glowing blade and glinting shield. It did not matter that Azrael had only seen him before in tapestries, frescoes and stained glass. His very blood knew this warrior's identity. His gene seeds sang with the truth. Teetering as close to being overwhelmed as it was possible for a Space Marine to become, Azrael went to one knee. He was looking at the Lion, returned to his gene sons at the hour of their greatest need. Some part of Azrael squirmed with dread, for the Primarch had also returned in time to witness the sins of the unforgiven writ large. His mind whirled with self-recriminatory images. The rock defiled by invasion, Luther's escape, the horrors unleashed by the Ch'Chulcha engine. Yet even these memories could not undermine the surge of raw vitality and exaltation that galvanized Azrael at the sight of the Lion, alive and returned. The Battle Brothers of the Deathwing bellowed amazed oaths as word spread from one band of Dark Angels to the next. The survivors of the Strike Force surged into their foes with redoubled zeal. Atop the tower, even Angron had paused to glare at his former brother. Yet the spell was broken as the Red Angel howled and launched himself at the Lion. Their mighty blades clashed again and again, sparks raining from each impact. The sword Samniarius struck the Lion's shield and rebounded in a concussive pulse of light and force. Several of the black-armored Space Marines who accompanied the Lion lunged to take advantage of the opening in the Demon Primarch's guard, and only now did Azrael register with disquiet their resemblance to warriors of the Fallen. Angron swept Spinegrinder in a roaring arc, and bloodied corpses scattered away from him. Azrael saw the Lion bark an order, and suddenly the black-armored warriors melted away down the tower steps towards the battle below. The Lion now backed away from his foe, and Angron stormed after him. Azrael realized it was no retreat, but rather an attempt to draw Angron away from the falling Dante. Back and forth across the tower top, the two demigods battled, Angron raining a constant storm of blows upon his foe, while the Lion demonstrated sublime martial skill in fending off or evading every strike. Flames and roiling mist whirled about the two combatants, tattering apart each time another shockwave burst from the Lion's shield. Azrael was torn away from the spectacle as a hail of bolts whipped up from below to ricochet from the Deathwing Terminator's formidable armor. Vox-amplified howls rose, warning of a fresh band of World Eaters storming up the gantries from street level to assault Azrael's position. He realized he had been entranced by his Gene Sire's arrival, but there was a battle to be fought in the here and now. But even as he rose and let fly into the foes climbing up from below, Azrael could not deny himself a last glance at the tower top. L. Johnson looked directly at Azrael, and their eyes locked. The sensation of his Primarch's regard hit Azrael like a physical blow. Fire seemed to race through his veins. No words could they exchange, yet in the moment the Supreme Master knew precisely what his Gene Sire wished of him.
The chapter is much changed from its former self, but we are still the First Legion. Unknown to many, we keep extremely close ties with our successors. Under the mantle of the Forgiven, all successors take part in the hunt, with some even founded to dedicate their existence to hunting specific Fallen that have eluded us. The inner circle of all chapters are privy to our mission, and will answer the call when asked, just as they did when the rock itself was invaded by the forces of chaos not so long ago. Though some chapters diverge from our teachings and shame, such as the Angels of Absolution, we are all one under the Lion, the Angels of Defiance, Redemption, Vengeance and Wrath, the Blade Keepers,
Blades of vengeance, bringers of judgment, consecrators, cowled wardens, disciples of Caliban, guardians of the covenant, knights of abhorrence, penitent blades, persecutors of darkness, prime absolvers, and the repentant brotherhood. All serve the ideals of the first and have continued the hunt just as the Dark Angels have for 10,000 years. I'm sure you've seen tell of our supposedly wayward actions, appearing at random to some battles to enact obscure goals, and once achieved, retreating in good order. This is our hunt for the fallen. Where we see evidence of one, we will act with swift brutality, sending strike forces to cut down anyone in our way and take our quarry away before their existence can be uncovered, ready to send them to the interrogator chaplains and the Lion. Where a fallen is found and captured, he is taken to a small oubliette and left there. When the Lion is able, he will enter the cell. After some time, the interrogator chaplains will then enter. On the interrogation slab, they will either see the fallen, still restrained, ready to be made to repent, or they will find nothing at all. Where the Lion takes these fallen, we know not. But those that earn redemption are accepted back into our ranks without question. Such is the decree of the Lion himself. Only those that are warped by chaos, truly unrepentant, will find absolution at the edge of a blade.
The Dark Angels are my sons, said the Lion in a tone that brooked no disagreement. All of the Dark Angels, those who name themselves Unforgiven and those they call Fallen. I have not forgotten this, and you may take my oath upon it that I will not allow it to be overlooked by anyone else. I care not whether they be lowly serf or my father himself upon his golden throne. My lord, said Bors, his heart thudding. He dropped to one knee, driven down by the force of conviction in the Lion's calm but utterly relentless words. He saw his brothers follow suit. I reject none but the faithless, L. Johnson continued. The betrayers, those who spurned all that the First Legion stood for, those who instead sullied their magnificence with the poisoned taint of chaos, as did the traitor Sephiroth, as did Luther. No matter the millennia that had passed, and all the miles uncounted that he had travelled since that last terrible day on Caliban, still the name of the arch-betrayer caused Bors a sudden shudder of anger and guilt. Even such as they may know my forgiveness, said the Lion, his words hard and clipped. But understand, my sons, their only absolution comes beneath the keen edge of my blade, so I shall end their suffering, their corruption, and the dishonour that they embody by their very act of being. But you, the Lion set aside blade and shield to reach down with both hands. He clasped Bors by his shoulder guards and raised him back to his feet again. He moved between them and repeated the process for each of his kneeling warriors before he spoke again. You are my risen sons. You do me nothing but honour by your presence at my side. So shall it be known by all. Bors was unable to find any words to express his pride and gratitude he felt in that moment. Before he could marshal his thoughts, a klaxon blared through the hall and then fell silent. First translation, Clarion, said Bronan. The hour draws nigh. And we shall be its equals, and more, said the Lion, with such conviction that Bors knew it as a truth fundamental to his very being. We are with you, Lord, he said. And in that we are all fortunate, the Lion replied, gathering up his war gear and raising his cowl so it shadowed his face. He clapped a gauntleted hand against Bors' shoulder guard as he made for the nearest door hatch. Gather the redeemed and make ready for battle, my sons. We go to do the Emperor's work. Not for glory or vengeance, but because loyalty is its own reward.
As you might expect, our culture is one shaped by our past. We keep the rites and rituals of our forefathers, and all are tied to our inner circle in some way. Every battle brother must prove himself to earn our trust, and with each rank gained, a Knight of Caliban learns more of their past and secrets. Just as you have, make no mistake. The fallen are not known by the whole chapter, but when a brother is finally told of their existence, he will always dedicate himself to the hunt without exception. I hope that you will do the same. The Primaris Marines have proven troubling in this way. Many brothers mistrusted them at first. After all, how could we trust a creation of Call, sent to us by Gilliman himself? For all we knew, they were designed to spill secrets to the Regent at the first opportunity. But many of you have proven yourselves true, and we've begun to accept them into our ranks. Many in the Deathwing have crossed the Rubicon themselves, and you will not be the first Primaris to see service in our number. We do not fawn over the Codex like the Ultramarines. Within our ranks can be found many unique roles. Interrogator chaplains are the keepers of our culture and ensure that our brothers stay true to the cause, but also act as the blade that pulls repentance from the fallen.
Within the Deathwing and Ravenwing companies, we field specialized units of Terminators and fast attack craft. The Deathwing Knight and Terminator squads acting as the anvil on which the hammer of the Ravenwing descends. Squadrons of ancient speeders and bikes with esoteric weaponry crushing our enemies. The Inner Circle companions, new to the chapter, act as bodyguards for the most honored commanders, their great blades carving any who might threaten their master's well-being. I know not where they emerged from, and know even less about their identities, but they serve, and that's good enough for me. Though to many outsiders, the remainder of our forces operate as Codex-compliant companies. But they would be wrong. We still follow the old ways of the First, deploying as strike forces that mimic the battle tactics of the knightly orders. The Hexagrammaton may be gone, but its spirit lives on through these formations. Our armor markings are more esoteric than the Codex-compliant forces too, with our symbols for roles such as close support being different. This is best symbolized by our company markings. A halved bone and green kneecap, for example, signifies the 6th Company. You will not find obvious lettering or signifiers here. We know our own, and that's all that matters. Our culture as a whole is defined by hushed conversations spoken in lingua mortis in dimly lit hallways, by ancient rites enacted in secluded chambers, and by the shame that guides us. Just as Fareth decreed, we are the unforgiven, and our shame will only be ended when the fallen have been found and dealt with. This doesn't mean that we can't share moments of levity, of course. Just don't let it interfere with your duty.
Come on, you laggard, Sabriel called back. He had opened another door and was lit by pale yellow light from another armory bay. You walk as slowly as you ride. Sabriel waited until Aniel had caught up with him before stepping through the opened hatch. Welcome, said the Space Marine as Aniel followed, to Armory Bay 1. Bay 1? Is that not the personal armory of Grandmaster Samael? His question needed no spoken answer. The bay itself was half the size of the others, about 50 meters by 100. There was loading and maintenance equipment stored along the walls, and at the center of the deck waited Corvex and Sableclaw, the Grandmaster's jet bike and land speeder. Anael had seen Samael's famous steeds in battle, but never so close, never able to examine them in detail. Both anti-grav machines were locked to the deck in broad clamps, pistons and hydraulics holding the skimmers in place. Anael went first to Sableclaw, while Sabriel inspected Corvex. The land speeder's gun mounts were empty at the moment. The ammunition feeds and hoppers opened for maintenance and cleaning. Anael had trained on a land speeder. All Ravenwing warriors could pilot skimmers as well as the aircraft used by the 2nd Company, and the controls were mostly familiar. There was a complex suite of scanner arrays and communication screens that he assumed were for commanding the company. He wanted to run a hand over the jet black paint, to climb up into the driver's chair or the gunner's cupola. The urge was almost overwhelming, but he fought it, knowing that it would be an act of disrespect. He turned around and found that his companion shared no such constraint. Sabriel sat astride Corvex, turning the handlebars and leaning left and right as though slaloming through an enemy battle line. Sabriel! Snapped Anael. Does it matter? Asked the other Space Marine. Do you think I will be a fine Grandmaster? I think you a fool if you aspire so highly, laughed Anael. Who would give you command of a company? You can barely control yourself. Is that not to my advantage? Said Sabriel. Anael realized he was being serious. The unexpected, the daring, they are the greatest weapons of the Ravenwing. I am Swordmaster, bearer of the Blade of Corswain, Black Knight of the Dark Angels. Why should I not be Grand Master one day? Tiberlane may have a greater claim before you. Anael did not want to tell his battle brother, but the thought of Sabriel leading the 2nd Company was nearly more dread-inspiring than the denizens of Ulthor. It is unseemly to harbour such ambitions. Be content with your current station. I do not seek to usurp any other's rightful claim, nor ignore the chain of command. I merely dream of serving with even greater glory. Is that so wrong? Anil did not reply, perturbed by the topic. He took several steps towards the other Space Marine, intending to pull him off the jet bike. A thrum of electricity and the flicker of overhead lights filled the chamber before he had a chance. One of the bay's main doors rumbled open, revealing a solitary figure standing on the ramp down to the central corridor. He was short and young, a serf dressed in the red robes of the armory. He had a digislate in his hands and seemed preoccupied as he stepped into the chamber. He looked up, stopped, eyes widening as he saw the 2 Space Marines. You're not supposed to be here, he said, hands trembling. We are Black Knights, the right hand of the Grand Master, said Anael, stepping away from the 2 machines. Sabriel dismounted and gave Corvex a parting pat on the handlebars. That is right. We pass where Samael passes. Who are you to question our right to be here? You misunderstand me, masters, said the serf. He bowed in apology. I merely meant that Lord Samael has issued an order for the company warriors to assemble for briefing. It sounded important.
Damn,
muttered Sabriel. He looked at Anael. I knew I came to tell you something. It slipped my mind. Idiot, snapped Anael. Selfish, vain, pompous idiot. Sabriel was already heading towards the open door, breaking into a run. If you had not been cleaning your bike, Sabriel called back, none of this would have happened. Anael glared at the serf, who stepped back, holding up the digislate like a shield. I do not have time for this, said Anael, shaking his head. He followed after Sabriel, realizing that whoever arrived at the briefing last would have the most penance to complete.
And so, now you know of your chapter a bit better. I am aware that you will have already been aware of most of this, but the formalities must always be observed. You understand. Rise now, a knight of the Deathwing, and go forth to do the work of the Lion and the Emperor above him.